I always knew something was off the day I found her prescription tucked behind the mouthwash, an unmarked white bottle. No label, just a pharmacy sticker with a date from last week. Funny thing is, I'm the one who's been sick lately. Stomach cramps, burning sensation, the occasional fever. You'd think the guy with the symptoms would be the one on medication. But no, she was the one treating herself quietly, stashing her little secret between whitening strips and feminine hygiene products. That's the thing about betrayal, it doesn't scream. It whispers in small, ugly details. We were brushing our teeth side by side, like we had 1,000 times before. She made some joke about getting tacos that night. Eyes locked on her reflection, not on me. I nodded like I was listening, but I wasn't. I was calculating. Because earlier that morning, in a haze of pain and paranoia, I'd gone to the urgent care clinic to get tested. The kind of test no faithful husband should ever need. And now, standing next to her while mint foam dribbled down my chin, I was thinking about that little bottle again. I knew the name of the medication. After Googling the pill imprint, it came up immediately. Azithromycin. One of the go-to antibiotics for chlamydia. Which was interesting, because I didn't have chlamydia. I was still waiting on my results, sure, but I knew damn well where I hadn't been. I hadn't been sticking it into anything but her for the past 4 years. Meanwhile, she was playing pharmacist in secret. That's when I started watching her with new eyes. I noticed she always took her phone into the bathroom, even during showers. I noticed how she never let me do laundry anymore. You'll shrink my stuff again, she'd said once, laughing. But now I wondered what I might have found if I'd checked those underwear a little closer. Maybe the real reason she kept them hidden was because you can't erase certain stains. And that's when the silence between us started to feel less like comfort and more like a crime scene. Everything looked the same on the surface, but it was like someone had rearranged the furniture in the middle of the night. Familiar, yet completely wrong. The final crack in the facade came the next morning. She left in a hurry for a girl's brunch, hair too done, heels too high, perfume too heavy. I pretended to still be asleep as she kissed my forehead and whispered, "Love you." Then I heard the front door click shut, and I got up. Her phone, her precious, always clutched, password-protected phone, was sitting on the nightstand. That never happened. It was always in her hand, like it was part of her anatomy. I picked it up, heart drumming in my ears but hand steady, and that's when I saw it. A message on the lock screen, bright and dumb and proud. Let me know if it still burns. I'm worried about you, face-blowing kiss. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't understand what it meant, but because I understood it perfectly. She had given it to him too. Whoever he was. She didn't even have the decency to feel ashamed. She was warning him, caring for him, while I sat at home with my guts twisting and my dignity bleeding out like roadkill on a summer highway. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I just smiled to myself, because finally, the puzzle made sense, and now I had something better than anger. I had purpose. You see, it's one thing to get cheated on. It's another to get infected. But it's an entirely different beast when you realize you've been lied to in 2 directions, your wife feeding you painkillers and excuses while spooning out affection to the guy who's probably scratching his crotch and wondering what the hell is happening. And that's when the idea hit me, not to confront her, not to cry, not to beg or accuse. No, I was going to introduce them. Not in person, of course. Something cleaner, colder. A dossier, perhaps. Evidence. Medical records. Timeline. A story with receipts, quite literally. Because if I was carrying around a disease I never asked for, the least I could do was make sure he knew who gave it to him. And the best part? He thought she was his. Thought she was leaving me for him. Thought he was winning. But when he sees the test result, my negative against her positive, and reads the text messages she sent about how it must have been my husband's fault, only to find out I was clean the entire time, he's going to realize he wasn't the prize. He was the sucker. The spare. The collateral damage. And when he walks away from her, disgusted, humiliated, maybe even infected, that's when I'll finally look her in the eye and say, I hope he was worth it. Because the cure for chlamydia might come in a pill bottle, but the cure for betrayal? That comes wrapped in silence, timing, and cold, surgical revenge. They say the worst storms come after the calm, and I used to think that was just a metaphor until I lived inside it. Our life looked picture-perfect from the outside, 2 incomes, no kids, nice house, matching cars, even a dog that knew how to high-five. We took weekend trips to little towns with artisanal coffee shops. We hosted barbecues where she laughed just the right amount at my jokes, and at night she curled into me like I was still the man she wanted. And maybe I was, for a while. But then the language started to change. Not mine, hers. Words like alignment and self-actualization started creeping into casual conversations over dinner. At first, I thought she just picked up a few buzzwords from some podcast or Instagram therapist. No big deal. But then it became constant. Suddenly, everything was about growth and space, and I found myself orbiting her life instead of living in it. She got into journaling, which seemed harmless until I found out she'd password protected the damn thing on her tablet. I didn't press, respecting boundaries, right? That's what she said she needed. Boundaries. The word hit like a knife wrapped in silk. Soft on the outside, sharp enough to bleed you out slowly. She stopped asking me to go on walks with her in the evenings. Said she needed to clear her head. She'd come back glowing, cheeks flushed like she'd just solved some great mystery about the universe. And me? I'd be sitting on the porch like a forgotten prop in the story of her self-discovery. Her clothes changed too, not in a flashy way, but in a curated, hyper-specific way. More crop tops, more high-waisted yoga pants, more lacy bralettes that she didn't wear around me. She'd say she was reclaiming her femininity. I didn't even know it had been stolen. But who was I to question it? I supported her. Bought her a new pair of running shoes when she said she wanted to get back into fitness. Drove across town to pick up the exact brand of tea she'd mentioned liking once. I listened. I gave her room. I stayed patient. Because that's what love is, right? Then came the solo retreats. That's what she called them. Just 2 days at a cabin upstate. No signal, no noise, just me in the woods, she said, with a serene smile that didn't reach her eyes. The first time, I packed her favorite snacks into her bag and slipped a note into her journal. I love the woman you're becoming. When she came back, the journal was blank. Still password protected, but not a single new page had been written. That's when I realized it was all for show. The journaling, the retreats, the sudden obsession with me time. It wasn't about finding herself. It was about losing me. She started locking her phone, not just with a fingerprint, Face ID, 6-digit PIN, and a setting that wiped the data after 10 failed tries. Paranoia, she said. Security. Everyone's getting hacked these days. And I believed her. Or at least I tried to. Because that's what I'd always done, believe her. When she stopped wearing her wedding ring and claimed it was giving her a rash, I believed her. When she said she needed to change her passwords because she'd been feeling vulnerable, I believed her. When she bought a second gym membership on the other side of town, I swallowed hard and told myself it was just for the steam room. She smiled like everything was fine, kissed me when she got home, made dinner like nothing had changed. But the music she played while cooking was different, newer, sexier, lyrics about liberation and being untouchable. She wore headphones more often, even around the house. Closed the door when she worked, even though she'd never done that before. The dog stopped sleeping at the foot of our bed and started curling up by the front door, like he was waiting for someone who wasn't me. I should have known. I should have seen it. But when you've built a life with someone, when you've invested every ounce of yourself into the idea that they are your home, you don't knock down the walls at the first sign of a crack. You patch it. You repaint. You pretend the noise you hear in the night is just the wind and not the sound of your marriage decaying from the inside out. Then came the notifications, silent, at first. Glimpses of names I didn't recognize when her phone would light up briefly on the counter. She said they were coworkers, mentors, old college friends reconnecting. One name appeared more than the others. I asked once, lightly, "Who's Kevin?" She smiled and said, "He's just a friend from my running group." And just like that, my gut twisted, but my face didn't. I nodded. I let it go. I didn't ask again. Because the truth is, I wanted to believe I was just being insecure. I wanted to believe I wasn't watching the slow-motion collapse of my own life. I wanted to believe that her growing distance was just a phase, a fog she would come out of eventually. But deep down, beneath all that hope, I knew. I knew that whatever version of her I had loved was already gone, and what was left was just the ghost of a woman who smiled at me out of habit, not love. It was a Thursday night when the final thread snapped, quiet, unassuming, just like her lie. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, both pretending to be watching the same Netflix documentary. She was halfway through a glass of red wine she claimed she didn't like anymore, too heavy, she'd said just last week, and scrolling through her phone like the world beyond its screen was far more interesting than anything I could offer. I wasn't even watching the show. My eyes were on the reflection in the dark TV screen, catching every flicker of her face as she smiled at messages I wasn't supposed to see. That smile wasn't for me. I hadn't seen that smile directed at me in months. But I wasn't ready yet. I needed proof, not assumptions, not gut feelings. I needed the kind of truth that couldn't be denied. So I waited. I kept my face neutral, let the silence stretch between us like a taut wire, and said nothing. And then it happened. Her phone buzzed once, an alert, short and high-pitched. She turned the screen toward herself slightly, angling it away from me in that instinctive, guilty little tilt that people think goes unnoticed. I didn't flinch. I leaned forward like I was grabbing the remote, but really I was watching the reflection again, catching the name that flashed across the top. K. That was all it showed, just a single initial, and a preview of the message. Can't stop thinking about this morning. Still got your perfume all over me. I felt the blood in my body shift, no surge of anger, no wild pulse, just a cold detachment like someone had flipped a switch in my spine. She laughed under her breath at something on the screen, then locked the phone and tucked it under her thigh like a child hiding stolen candy. That's when I knew I wasn't crazy. That's when every second of doubt, every gaslight conversation, every hollow kiss and evasive smile collapsed into a single, undeniable truth. I was not her husband anymore. I was the placeholder, the cover, the background noise to her double life. She stood up, stretched, and told me she was going to take a bath. Long day, she said, like I hadn't spent mine crawling through the wreckage of our marriage in silence. She left the wine glass, still half full, and walked upstairs without a second glance. I waited until I heard the water running. Then I stood, walked over to the couch, picked up her phone from under the cushion, already knowing it was locked, already knowing I wouldn't try to break into it, not tonight, because I didn't need to see more. I already had everything I needed, the name, the words, the look on her face when she thought I wasn't watching. I sat back down, placed the phone exactly where I found it, and stared at the wine glass. Lipstick on the rim. Not the shade she usually wore, not the neutral pink I knew, but a deeper red, bolder, confident. The kind of color women wear when they're not coming home right after work. That was the second confirmation. The third came later, after she went to bed. I walked the dog around the block, pretending I needed the air, and when I came back in through the garage, I noticed her gym bag by the door. Something inside me whispered to check. Not out of suspicion, out of necessity. The zipper slid down with a slow, metallic sigh, and there it was, a motel receipt. Folded once, stained faintly with something that smelled like cheap perfume. Check-in. 10:42 a.m. Check-out. 12:15 p.m. Same day, she told me she was going to her therapist. The receipt was still warm, like the memory of what happened there hadn't cooled yet. I didn't take a picture. I didn't pocket it. I just stared at the address, one of those hourly roadside places with paper-thin walls and cigarette burns in the sheets, and quietly folded it back, placed it where I found it, and zipped the bag shut. When I went upstairs, she was asleep, or pretending to be. Her breathing was too even, too practiced. I stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching her. Her face looked peaceful, like she hadn't just detonated a bomb under the foundation of our life. I didn't speak, didn't touch her. I just watched the rise and fall of her chest and wondered how many men had seen her like this, soft, vulnerable, unknowing, while I was out earning the money that funded her secrets. I climbed into bed beside her, turned away, and stared into the dark. I didn't feel pain anymore. I felt clarity. Cold, mechanical clarity. Because love is a bond, but betrayal is a blueprint. And now that I had all the pieces, I could start building. Not a confrontation. Not a fight. A plan. One that would make sure I wasn't the only one bleeding at the end of this story. She had made her move. Now it was my turn. She thought I was sleeping. That was her first mistake. Because once the weight of betrayal shifts your brain into survival mode, sleep becomes a luxury reserved for people who don't live with a stranger in their bed. So I lay there, night after night, next to a woman I no longer recognized, listening to her breathing and wondering how many men had heard that same rhythm echo in motel rooms with peeling wallpaper and buzzing neon signs. But I didn't confront her. That would have been too easy for her. Instead, I became quieter, more helpful, more agreeable, the perfect husband. Because the more comfortable she felt, the more careless she became. She mistook my silence for ignorance, and ignorance for weakness. And that's when I started planning. Step 1 was to monitor without making her feel monitored. I offered to make her lunch for work, something I hadn't done in a while, which she accepted with a fake smile. Before sealing the container, I slipped a tiny GPS tracker, disguised as a magnetic key tag, into the lining of her bag. Nothing illegal, just enough to give me a breadcrumb trail. That very same day, she told me she had a women's empowerment seminar downtown. The tracker pinged her location at a Holiday Inn off the freeway for 2 hours. There was no seminar, but there was a Denny's across the parking lot, and I'm guessing she didn't go there for pancakes. The next move required precision. I logged into our joint bank account, not because I suspected money was missing, but because paper trails don't lie. I filtered the transactions by her card and looked for patterns. Weekly Uber rides on weekday mornings, always between 10 a.m. and noon. Odd, considering she claimed to be working from home during those hours. Then there were purchases at gas stations far from her office, sometimes followed by digital tips sent via Venmo to names I'd never heard of. One, in particular, caught my attention, Kenny R. That name showed up 4 times in 2 weeks, always following a $60 or $80 transaction at a liquor store or fast food joint. I searched her contacts. No Kenny R. She'd hidden him well, but not well enough. I reverse searched his Venmo handle and found a public profile, fitness coach, 28, cocky smile, and a photo of him flexing shirtless with the same Adidas cap I'd seen once in the back seat of her car. I kept scrolling. One of his posts showed a blurry, overexposed photo of a woman's legs on a hotel bed. No face, just legs. But I knew those shoes. I bought them for our anniversary 2 years ago. Still, I didn't break. I escalated. Quietly. Strategically. I created a burner Instagram profile, just some bland, local-looking guy with gym selfies and a dog. Then I followed her. She didn't notice. She accepted the request within minutes. That's how I learned she had a second account. A private one. Just for the girls, she once claimed. But the captions were drenched in innuendo. Feeling alive again, paired with a mirror selfie in a bathroom that wasn't ours. Midweek cravings, next to a photo of a wine glass and a man's hand. Not my hand. Bigger. Hairier. I zoomed in and saw the faint outline of a tattoo on the wrist, Kenny's. The nail in the coffin came when I tested her lies in real time. One morning, she said she was going to meet her sister for brunch at a vegan place across town. I nodded, smiled, and asked her to pick up a specific tea from the organic shop nearby. Of course, baby, she said, like everything was normal. An hour later, I sent her a text. Forgot my meeting got rescheduled. Might swing by the tea shop myself. No reply. But the GPS showed she hadn't moved in 30 minutes. Still parked in the same cul-de-sac I'd flagged last week. I looked it up, Kenny's apartment complex. I waited until she got home that night. Watched her walk in with a tote bag and sunglasses, lips slightly swollen, eyes glowing with borrowed passion. She kissed me on the cheek like she hadn't just spent the afternoon getting railed by another man. I asked how brunch went. She told me her sister was stressed about work. I nodded sympathetically, even chuckled when she called her sister a hot mess. Then I asked about the tea. Oh damn, she said, smacking her forehead playfully. I totally forgot. Next time, promise. I smiled, said it was okay. But in that moment, I saw the full picture. Clear as crystal, sharp as glass. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a drunken one-night slip or a crisis of identity. This was routine. Rehearsed. She had rebuilt her life around this deception, brick by brick, and I had been the foundation she stomped on to reach it. But the beauty of staying quiet, of watching from the shadows, is that it gives you power. She thought she had the upper hand. She thought she was manipulating me. What she didn't know was that I was already 10 steps ahead. I wasn't just gathering information. I was building a timeline, a dossier, a story so airtight that when it came time to drop the hammer, there would be no escape. She wouldn't even have time to lie. And best of all, Kenny, the side-piece fitness clown, had no idea he was about to get front-row seats to the fallout. Because if she wanted to play games, I was more than ready. She just forgot one thing. I don't lose. I wait. I plan. And when I strike, it's with precision. She wouldn't see it coming. Not from me. Not from the man who made her believe he was still asleep. It happened during a fitness gala fundraiser, of all places. She'd been invited to attend as a guest of honor for helping organize the venue, and I played the role of supportive husband to perfection, smiling for photos, shaking hands, even posing with her under the giant LED display bearing her name. The crowd was high-end. Personal trainers, influencers, startup CEOs, all dressed in cocktail attire and trying to outshine each other. I'd planned it precisely this way because this was her new playground, the place where she felt untouchable. I let her bask in the glow for an hour, sipping champagne, laughing with her coworkers, trading air kisses with gym rats who smelled like protein powder and narcissism. She was in her element, radiant, energized, oblivious. She didn't notice the tech crew in the back corner, the ones I'd paid to run a highlight reel of gala supporters on the massive screen behind the stage. She didn't know I'd fed them a new file just before the event, titled simply campaign_B_roll. So when the music dipped and the MC began thanking contributors, she turned to me and whispered, "Isn't this amazing?" And I said, "It's about to be." Her eyes flicked to the screen, expecting her headshot or a logo. Instead, what appeared was a 4-minute silent montage security camera footage from a motel parking lot over 2 weeks. Always the same car, always the same man. Kenny. One shot of him opening her door. One of her fixing her lipstick in the rearview mirror. One of them holding hands, her head resting on his shoulder while he scrolled through his phone. A few gasps rippled through the audience. Then came the screenshots, text messages, timestamped, projected in full-screen clarity. "You're so much stronger than him. I wish I'd met you first. You make me feel like a goddess. He's just there. You're real." She didn't even turn to look at me. She froze. Face drained. Smile evaporated. The room buzzed with confused chatter and shifting feet. The MC fumbled for words. And then, as the final slide appeared, her lingerie crumpled on Kenny's floor with her name embroidered on the waistband, she finally moved. She turned to me, voice low, eyes wide, and said, "This isn't what it looks like." I said nothing. Just stared at her like I was watching a building collapse in slow motion. "We were just talking," she said, her voice shaky, slipping into phase 2 like a script she'd rehearsed in her head 100 times. I tilted my head, still calm, still silent, waiting for her to realize the gravity of what she was saying in front of 100 silent witnesses. Okay, maybe it got a little too far, but it wasn't serious, it didn't mean anything. She rushed on, her fingers twitching as if trying to hold onto a version of herself that hadn't just been exposed like a fraud. I still said nothing. Then came the pivot. "You never noticed me," she snapped, voice gaining volume, dragging attention back to her. "You stopped seeing me. I tried to talk to you, but you always shut me out. You made me feel invisible." The irony nearly made me laugh. But I didn't. I just looked her dead in the eye and said, "I was invisible? You were the one hiding in motel rooms at noon." That hit her like a slap. Then came the mocking grin, her final defense. "You know what? Maybe I did it because I wanted something real. Maybe I needed to feel wanted. Maybe Kenny gave me something you couldn't." And I leaned in just slightly, voice soft, precise, cutting. "All he gave you was a countdown." Her smirk faltered. "A countdown to what?" she asked, suddenly less certain. "To the day he finds out you gave him chlamydia and told him it came from me," I said evenly. "To the day he realizes the goddess he's worshipping infects everything she touches." Her face collapsed. The color drained, her mouth opened, but no words came out. "I sent him the test results this morning," I added, like I was reciting tomorrow's weather. "Mine came back clean. Yours? Well, you know." She took a step back, hand to her mouth, as the room around us began to buzz louder, whispers turning into murmurs, murmurs into judgment. Her friends weren't circling her now. They were moving away, slowly, like someone had dropped a live grenade at her feet. She reached out toward me, eyes pleading now. "We can fix this. Please. This can't be how it ends." I stepped closer, just enough so she could hear me over the noise. "Oh, this isn't the end," I whispered. "This is just the part where everyone sees who you really are." And with that, I turned back to the crowd, nodded at the MC, and walked off stage as the screen faded to black. I didn't storm out. I didn't slam doors. I didn't look back. But I could feel her watching me, desperate and exposed, as the last illusions she built around herself crumbled into ash in front of people whose opinions she worshipped. And I hadn't raised my voice once. The next morning she stormed into the kitchen like a hurricane wearing yesterday's makeup, eyes bloodshot, phone in her hand, mouth already moving before I even looked up from my coffee. "What the hell did you do?" she hissed, holding the screen out like it was a weapon. "Kenny blocked me. He thinks I lied to him. He thinks I infected him. Why would you do that? What is wrong with you?" Her voice cracked as she spoke, brittle and panicked, like a puppet whose strings had been cut mid-performance. I took another sip, slowly, and said nothing. That silence was louder than any scream could have been, and it made her unravel even faster. "You want to destroy me? Is that it?" she shouted, pacing, arms flailing like a desperate actress playing to an empty theater. "You're so calculated, so cold. You always had to be the good guy, right? The calm one. Well, congratulations, you won. Is that what you want to hear? I looked up, finally, and said, I already knew I won. I just wanted you to understand how badly you lost. That stopped her. She blinked, lips parted, fury short-circuited by the flatness in my tone. You're not even angry, she said, voice smaller now. You're just dead inside. I shook my head, slowly. No, I'm free. Her mouth twisted, a bitter smile forming. You smothered me, she spat. You made everything about schedules and responsibilities and routines. I felt like a prisoner in my own house. I nodded. And yet, you were the one sneaking out of it like a thief. She threw her hands up, exasperated, desperate to find something that would land. You were boring, she screamed, as if that justified anything. You never challenged me, you never took charge, you were just there. Always safe, always predictable. I needed passion, danger. I needed to feel alive again. I leaned back in my chair and studied her like she was a puzzle missing half the pieces. So you looked for life between motel sheets with a guy who calls himself a fitness entrepreneur and can't spell restaurant without autocorrect. She clenched her fists, trembling with rage. This wouldn't have happened if you were a real man, she shrieked. A real man would have. I stood up slowly, deliberately, and cut her off with a single look. A real man doesn't chase after what he's already outgrown. That broke something in her. She staggered back a step like I'd hit her, but I hadn't even raised my voice. You think you're better than me now, she hissed. You think just because you exposed me in front of a few gym rats and influencers that you're some kind of moral giant? I walked past her, set my mug in the sink, and said without turning around, No, I think I'm someone you'll never be able to touch again. Her breath caught. That was the moment she realized the power was gone. The hold she once had over me, the guilt, the obligation, the fear, it had all evaporated, leaving behind a version of me she couldn't manipulate anymore. She tried a different angle then, softer, fake tears welling up like clockwork. We were good once, she whispered. Weren't we? I turned to face her. We were. And then you mistook kindness for weakness and loyalty for blindness. She reached out to touch my arm. I didn't move, but I didn't lean in either. Her fingers hovered for a second, then dropped. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, voice cracking. I lost myself. I didn't know how to ask for help. I looked her in the eyes, calm and brutal. You didn't ask for help. You asked for distraction. And now you've got consequences instead. Her face twisted again, confusion, regret, resentment all crashing together. You're heartless, she said, but even she didn't believe it. Not after everything. Not when she was the one who'd played me like a pawn while she played house with a personal trainer who couldn't even afford his own gym. I stepped closer, just once, to make sure she heard the last nail drive in. You didn't just cheat on me. You gambled your future on a man who doesn't even want to be seen with you now. Her lip trembled, but I was already walking away, not out of anger, but because I was done. Not leaving yet, but done. And that, more than anything I could have said or screamed, is what shattered her. Because I wasn't fighting anymore. I wasn't chasing, convincing, pleading. I was indifferent, cold, unreachable. She could yell, cry, accuse, bargain, it wouldn't matter. The more she tried, the smaller she looked. And the smaller she looked, the more I realized I'd been dragging a dead weight behind me for years, mistaking it for love. She was spiraling, clawing at air, and I was standing still, calm as glass. She knew it, and I knew she knew it. That's what terrified her the most. She thought silence meant retreat, that my lack of yelling, my calm demeanor, my quiet withdrawal from our shared routines was the behavior of a man defeated. What she didn't understand, what she never understood, was that I wasn't stepping back. I was preparing. Because real power doesn't scream. It calculates. It sharpens its blades in the dark, then strikes in daylight with surgical precision. I began with the digital. Every message, every transaction, every photo, and GPS log. I archived it all. I made redundant backups, encrypted copies, even printed out color-highlighted dossiers that looked like they belonged in a courtroom exhibit. Her affair wasn't just physical, it was logistical, and she had left a trail longer than she knew. I compiled everything in a quiet, organized manner, labeled folders, timestamps, cross-referenced text chains, and bank statements. I wasn't trying to convince anyone. I was building something irrefutable. Then I moved to the financials. The joint account became mine and all, but name, password changed, notifications rerouted, spending alerts triggered. I opened a new account, shifted my direct deposits, and waited for her to try using the card one morning for her overpriced green juice only to have it declined. She called me in a panic. I let it ring. When she got home, she looked at me like she still had the right to demand answers. I just handed her an envelope. Inside, a copy of the new account statement with my name only and a note that read that life wasn't free. You just didn't realize who was paying for it. She stormed out. I smiled. Next, I reclaimed everything tangible. The second car, technically mine, was quietly towed from her gym's parking lot during her afternoon session. The locks on the house were changed while she was out for her nature walks. Her name was off the utilities by the end of the week. I even rerouted the internet account, resetting the Wi-Fi just once to let her know she was no longer connected to anything here. Her closet space? Halved. Her belongings? Neatly boxed, labeled, and stored in the garage like a package waiting for final delivery. I didn't throw a single thing away. I wasn't emotional. I was precise. Methodical. The kind of clean, calculated execution you'd expect from someone who no longer saw his enemy as a person, but as a file to be closed. The legal strike was next. I filed quietly, no dramatic courtroom scenes, no screaming over custody or property. Just a clean, brutal motion with supporting evidence attached like bullets in a magazine. Adultery, documented. Financial misconduct, evidenced. Health risk, verified. I chose a lawyer who didn't smile, didn't blink, didn't speak in metaphors. Just numbers and options and timelines. Within a week, the divorce papers were processed, and a restraining clause added: no overnight guests, no access to joint property, no claim to any asset gain during the time she spent lying to my face. She received them via courier at her work. At the same moment, a discreet package arrived at her HR department, containing a summary of her activities during work hours, complete with GPS logs and inappropriate messaging timestamped between client meetings. I didn't accuse. I didn't threaten. I simply informed, respectfully, professionally. A courtesy, really. Then came the social demolition. I didn't post anything. I didn't go public. I just shared the truth in private, strategic conversations. Her parents got a flash drive. Her sister got a sealed manila envelope. Her friends, the real ones, got screenshots. I didn't badmouth her. I just let her own words and actions speak. The erosion was slow but deliberate. Invitations stopped coming. Texts stopped being returned. Her phone calls started going unanswered. She was still smiling on Instagram, still posting quotes about healing and strength, still trying to paint herself as the phoenix rising from the ashes. But I'd made sure the ashes followed her everywhere. Even Kenny had gone silent. From what I heard, he didn't take the chlamydia news well, especially not after I kindly informed him that she told me he was just a dumb hobby. I didn't say it to be cruel. I said it so he'd know exactly where he stood when she tried crawling back. He didn't answer her messages after that. Didn't show up to her gym sessions. She was left chasing shadows of men who had finally seen her clearly. And still, she thought she had time. Time to regroup. Time to negotiate. Time to spin another story, cast another spell, find another savior. But the truth was, she was already surrounded. Everything she thought was hers, her comfort, her image, her security, was already gone. Not with a bang, but with quiet, relentless precision. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to threaten. I simply took everything she thought I'd never have the strength to take. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted peace. And the only way to get it was to make sure she never had a place in my life again, not even in memory. The gala was her idea, ironically. A charity fundraiser for mental health awareness, full of influencers and wellness entrepreneurs who all smiled too wide and clapped too hard. She'd been planning it for months, back when she still believed she was the star of her own redemption arc, the woman who had made a few mistakes, but was finding herself again. She invited everyone, her parents, her coworkers, her gym friends, even the therapist she claimed to be seeing. She made sure she looked perfect that night, hair curled just enough to look effortless, lips painted in a color that screamed confidence, the same shade she once wore for him. She clung to my arm as we entered, beaming like nothing had happened, like the walls around her weren't already crumbling. The crowd was polite, but not warm. A few awkward smiles. A couple of people turned away too quickly. She didn't notice at first. She was too busy performing, floating from group to group, laughing a little too loud, throwing in buzzwords like healing, empowerment, self-growth. Then her father arrived, usually first to hug her, always proud. But this time, no embrace. Just a nod, distant and hollow. He looked at me, held my gaze for a second longer than necessary, and said nothing. Her mother didn't come at all. She checked her phone more than once, fidgeted with her bracelet, but played it off. She wasn't feeling well, she said. She sends love. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Then came the best friend, Julia. They'd been inseparable since college, used to call themselves ride or die. But when Julia walked in and made a beeline toward me instead, everything shifted. She gave me a hug, whispered, "You deserved better," then turned and gave my wife, her best friend, a look colder than ice. That was the first crack in her smile. Barely noticeable, but it was there. She tried to keep up the performance, but the crowd was slipping away. Conversations paused when she approached. People exchanged glances behind her back. She leaned in and asked, "Is something going on?" I just raised an eyebrow. No more than usual. She laughed nervously, but it didn't land. The sound was too thin. And then, as if summoned by the tension, Kenny arrived. Alone. Late. Uninvited. He didn't look like the man from her phone. No swagger. No arrogance. Just a hollowed-out version of himself, jaw clenched, hands shoved deep in his pockets. He didn't greet her. Didn't even look her in the eye. He went straight to the bar, ordered a drink, downed it, then left. Just like that. She watched him go, panic rising like bile in her throat, and I watched her realize that the one man she'd gambled everything for wanted nothing to do with her anymore. Her hand trembled when she picked up her wine. She scanned the room, hoping to find an ally. But no one stepped forward. People who used to adore her now stared with carefully measured indifference. Whispers were louder now, not even trying to hide. She turned to me and hissed, "What did you do?" I smiled. Just enough. Nothing they didn't deserve to know. She tried to fight it. She pulled out her phone, desperate to control the narrative, to post something clever, something that would paint her as misunderstood, rising from the ashes again. But as she opened Instagram, she saw it. A story already circulating, screenshots, the motel footage, her messages to Kenny, laid out in brutal detail. Anonymous, timestamped, shared by a burner account I'd created weeks ago, now suddenly leaked. It was spreading like wildfire. People were watching her crumble in real time. One of her coworkers pulled out his phone, scrolled, showed it to the woman next to him. They looked at her, then turned away. Her hands were shaking now. She backed into a corner of the room, clutching her clutch like it could anchor her, like it could somehow keep her upright. "This is character assassination," she whispered to no one in particular. "This is abuse. He's manipulating you. He's lying." But no one was listening anymore. Her voice cracked. Her eyes darted wildly, searching for something, someone who would tell her it wasn't real, that she still had control. But all she found was me, standing across the room, watching. Calm. Steady. Unmoving. She locked eyes with me, and for a split second, her mouth opened to speak. But there was nothing left to say. She saw it then. Not hate. Not revenge. Not even satisfaction. Just absence. The kind of absence that comes when you finally stop caring. And that, more than the footage, the whispers, the silence, that broke her. Her face collapsed in on itself. The tears came, mascara running, her perfect look smudged and ruined by truth. Her knees buckled slightly. Someone asked if she needed to sit. She didn't answer. She looked at me one more time, desperate, hollow, ruined. And I didn't move. I didn't approach. I didn't offer her a single word. Because she already had all the answers. And now, so did everyone else. It happened in the worst place possible for her. Her parents' anniversary party. A garden event, full of white tablecloths, champagne flutes, fairy lights strung across the hedges like they were trying to decorate denial. Everyone she knew was there, family, coworkers, old friends she hadn't seen in years, all gathered in one neat little social circle she used to dominate. She was trying to play it cool, floating from guest to guest, dressed like she still had a life worth envying. But the tension was already thick. Her parents barely looked at her. Her father shook my hand longer than necessary, eyes full of apology. Her mother avoided hers altogether. My brother stood at my side, arms crossed, silent but ready, and her best friend Julia hadn't even acknowledged her presence since arriving. And then Kenny showed up. He wasn't supposed to. She must have invited him behind everyone's back, hoping he'd be the lifeline that proved she still had power, still had someone in her corner. But when he saw me, saw the way the room shifted as I stood up and walked across the lawn to her, his confidence evaporated like cheap cologne in the sun. He backed away toward the gate, and she called after him, voice cracking, Don't leave." But he didn't even slow down. That's when I spoke. "Your boy toys faster on foot than in bed," I said coldly, and the whole yard froze. A few gasps. Glass clinking. Conversations dying mid-sentence. She spun around, eyes wide, panicked. You don't get to humiliate me like this, she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. You don't get to ruin my family. I stepped closer, voice low but sharp enough to slice air. I didn't ruin your family. I just showed them who actually did. Her father stepped forward as if to calm things, but I held up a hand. No, they deserve to hear this. All of it. She turned to her parents, voice rising into a shrill defense. He's twisting everything. He's making it all sound worse than it was. I cut her off, louder now. Worse than it was? You gave another man a disease and told him it came from me. You dragged my name through filth while sneaking off during work hours to play house in a motel. You told your friends I was controlling, cold, boring. And all I ever did, was believe in you. The room had gone deathly still. Her mother covered her mouth. Julia took a step back like she couldn't stand the sight of her. She lunged toward me, face flushed. You think you're perfect? You think you're some kind of saint, she snapped. You were so easy to lie to because you never noticed anything. You were blind. No, I said. I was loyal. There's a difference. You want everyone here to think I'm the monster? She shrieked. Fine. I cheated. I messed up. But you made me feel like nothing. You were just there. Existing. Planning. Organizing. Never living. You needed me to be stable while you collapsed behind my back, I replied, staring into her unraveling soul. You needed me to clean up your chaos, pay your bills, fix your lies, and when I stopped doing that, you called me boring. That's not just betrayal. That's cowardice. She laughed, wild and hollow. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me fall apart. I tilted my head. No, I'm just making sure everyone sees what I've been living with. Because behind that smile you use to charm strangers is a black hole that swallows loyalty, love, and logic. She screamed, actually screamed, and tried to push past me, but someone stepped between us, her brother, face pale with disbelief. Stop, he said. Just stop. Her eyes darted to her parents again. Her mother was crying quietly. Her father turned away. You all act like I'm some villain, she said, voice breaking. I made a mistake. No, I interrupted. You made a choice. Over and over. And now you don't get to play the victim just because you finally got caught. People had their phones out now. Someone was filming. A few more guests were slipping away, not wanting to witness more, others frozen in second-hand horror. She sank to the edge of a chair, hands in her hair, shaking. You never really loved me, she whispered. You just loved the idea of being the good guy. I stepped closer, so only she could hear. No, I said. I loved you so much I let you destroy me. But I rebuilt, without you. She looked up at me then, tears streaking her mascara, mouth trembling. Please, we can fix this. I stared at her for a moment, then said, you don't fix a fire by hugging the arsonist. And I turned away, not in haste, not in fury, but in finality. Behind me, silence hung heavier than any applause. She was broken in front of everyone, and I didn't have to say another word. It didn't take long for the collapse to begin. She tried to keep it together at first, posting vague quotes about growth and rising from adversity, hoping to spin the exposure into a redemption arc, but no one was buying it anymore. Her gym revoked her access. For the safety of other clients, her employer launched a quiet review of her conduct, and within a week, she was let go due to reputation concerns. Friends she used to laugh with stopped responding to her texts. Some blocked her. Others ghosted silently. Julia didn't say a word, just unfollowed her across every platform. Her social media turned into a wasteland of motivational posts with no likes, no comments, just empty echoes of a persona nobody respected anymore. Her parents, once proud, once blindly supportive, sent a single group message saying they were taking time to process what they'd learned. Her father, who used to beam when she walked into a room, didn't return her calls. Her mother, ashamed beyond words, moved in with her sister for a while to avoid questions from neighbors. Her younger cousin removed her from their family group chat. People she once bragged to now crossed the street when they saw her. She left the city not long after, packed what little dignity she had left, and moved to a smaller town a few hours away where no one knew her name, no one whispered behind her back, and no one remembered the woman who used to hold court at every gathering. I heard she took a part-time job managing a vitamin shop inside a dying strip mall, surrounded by shelves of overpriced supplements in the deafening silence of anonymity. Kenny? Gone. Ghosted her the moment his name started circulating, the second it became uncomfortable to be associated with her. She messaged me a few weeks later. Just one line. I still love you. I stared at it for a long time before replying, strange. I don't even remember your name anymore. She tried again. Emails. Voicemails. A handwritten letter left at my front door, pages soaked in tears and smeared ink, begging for a conversation, just one chance to talk like real people. She even showed up once, uninvited, standing on my doorstep in the rain like she was starring in some cheap romantic drama. Makeup running, voice trembling, coat soaked through. Please, she said, eyes swollen, hair clinging to her face. I don't want to be this person anymore. I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. And for a second, I looked at her, not with hate, not with anger, but with the clarity of someone who had finally woken up. I didn't see my wife. I didn't see the woman I once stayed up nights thinking about. I saw a stranger. A cautionary tale in human form. She stepped closer. Can we talk? Just, please, say something. Anything. I held the doorframe, calm, unmoved. Then I said, I already said goodbye. You were just too busy lying to hear it. I shut the door. Didn't slam it. Didn't look back. She stood there for a while, I think. I heard her crying softly through the glass. Then, finally, her footsteps fading. That was the last time I saw her. And if there's one thing I learned, it's this. Some people aren't sorry for what they did. They're sorry they got caught. They're sorry you stopped being their shield. And when the world finally shows them the same indifference they once showed you, only then do they come crawling back. But by then, it's already over. I don't hate her. I just don't care anymore. And for someone like her, that's the deepest cut of all. Thanks for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're from, and more importantly, did you enjoy the fall?